Welcome back, fight fans. We're back, and we've actually got something to talk about this week. UFC. Actually, I was gonna say UFC Vegas 66. It's not in Vegas this time. Finally, we've got another one outside of Vegas. UFC Orlando. It's a pretty good looking card, I gotta say. So far, I mean, as it stands, there's 15 fights on there. That's the biggest card we've had in a while. I mean, the fights on the card look pretty good too, even in the prelims. I mean, it's actually, I mean, I'm not going to say it's pay-per-view level because, there's no belts or anything, but the prelims and the main card are looking pretty good. It's the same thing that they've kind of been doing in, Paris and London. They've got a pretty good looking card. And of course, we had last week off, which means basically they were trying to save the talent, of course, for this week and next week for the pay-per-view, of course. So, pretty good looking week this week. So, we will, of course, start with the main card, and that, as it stands, of course, opens with Eric Anders and Kyle Dawkins. Of course, as always, any of this could change at any moment, and I'm sure it probably will. But like I said, as it stands right now, Eric Anders, Kyle Dawkins opening the main card. We'll start right there. Oh, I need my banner ready for the odds, of course. There we go. Okay. Not too much to say about this matchup. I mean, Anders kind of getting on in his career. I don't want to say he's old because he's definitely got for sure, 3, 4, maybe 5 years left. But definitely, a little bit of a decline. Whereas Kyle Dawkins, I mean, he was really just shooting up there. I mean, basically, he was beating Kevin Holland. Of course, he had that unfortunate clash of heads that did end the fight, of course. But honestly, he was kind of dominating before that happened. So he was on his way up, and then that all crashed and burned in his last fight, which was Roman Dolidze. And I'm not saying Roman Dolidze hasn't looked impressive, but and I'm not saying he got super lucky in his last two fights, but I gotta say, I don't think he's quite as good as the results are kind of showing. I think Dawkins just kind of, even while I was watching it, I was like, well, that was really unlucky because he got stuck in a certain spot and then out of nowhere, Dolidze threw something, then he just didn't see it, got caught, and that was it. I mean, again, obviously that had everything to do with Dolidze being a pretty powerful and smart striker, but at the same time, he got stuck in a weird spot that I you don't normally see people get stuck in. It was something weird along the fence. I can't remember exactly what happened, but it was something where I was like, that was weird. That was just an unfortunate place to be in that he would not normally be in. So I mean, kind of more unlucky than anything else. I think it should have, I mean, who knows what would have happened 2, 3 rounds in, but I mean, it definitely should not have been over that early, is all I'm trying to say. And yeah, Dawkins has just been doing much better overall. So I mean, actually, I really, like I said, there wasn't really much to say. I probably even said way too much. Really, all I needed to say was that Dawkins is still very much, I would say, he should be in the top 15. Anders, not so much. Anders is 37 actually. I thought he was 34. So 37, I actually think maybe 3, 4 years might be a little too much. I think I'm thinking probably, next year, the year after, it's probably gonna be it. If not this one, if he gets absolutely destroyed out there. And he just hasn't been performing that much recently. And, I don't think either one of them is gonna get a finish either way. I think we're seeing a decision here pretty much no matter what. It's just kind of what both of them do. So I'm not seeing a finish here. I'm seeing a decision, and I do think Anders is going to make it interesting, but I would say Dawkins has a pretty clear advantage, especially since he is, Yeah, I mean, he's younger. I think he's also, I'm pretty sure he's taller as well by a decent margin. And he's a pretty good grappler. I mean, Anders is obviously the grappler going into this, I would say. But, that's what I mean. Like, I don't think Anders is going to be dominating him on the ground. And I think that Dawkins is better on the feet. So it just kind of seems there's a lot more going in Dawkins' direction that will give him a decision win. But I do think it's going to be close. I do think it's going to be close. But I would say Dawkins is the clear choice for that one. And if you go towards the odds, we're seeing exactly that. Minus 213 for Dawkins. So, definitely leaning in that direction without going crazy overboard towards it, which I think is exactly where it needs to be. Plus 166 for Anders. And then if you go towards the over under, obviously favoring that over, which is exactly what I was saying. I don't think we're going to be seeing a finish here. So over over 2.5 for minus 180. At minus 180, I should say. Excuse me. I would say that is definitely the way to go with it. And minus 180, it's not bad. That's really not bad. I would have thought it would have been slightly higher, actually. So that's a pretty good looking one. I would say, yeah, I'll put that in some of the parlays for sure. Dawkins is pretty good. And pretty consistent, I would say, except for that last one. Like I said, he kind of just got caught there. So yeah. And speaking of Roman Dolidze, that is who is in the fight right after that. Roman Dolidze, Jack Hermansson, and I gotta say, no matter what we all kind of think about Roman Dolidze, whether you think that it was, the last two fights maybe a little bit. I'm not saying lucky. He obviously earned the finish, but they're unusual circumstances compared to other fights, I would say. If you really watch a lot of fighting, they were a little bit like, oh, neither one of those fighters really acted like they normally would. So it was just kind of weird. And then on the other side, Jack Hermansson, who, I mean, really kind of just nullified anything Chris Curtis had in their last fight. That was his last fight, Chris Curtis. This was a couple months ago. And I mean, it was a pretty obvious decision win for Hermansson. And it was because he didn't jump in there. And that's exactly how Chris Curtis usually wins is people get into fights with him and then he eventually takes advantage of it and wins, which is a pretty good style to have, obviously. Very successful. But with Hermansson, he didn't give him anything. He didn't give him a single thing to move forwards on. And that's what Roman Dolidze needs too. It's it's honestly, I would say the exact same kind of style. Dolidze needs somebody to go towards him and that's exactly how he won it. That's kind of which is why it was unusual because the two guys that he went against don't normally push forward like that, and they did that in that fight, and they paid the price. Whereas Hermansson does not do that. He will not do that because if he could do that against Chris Curtis, he can definitely do it against Roman Dolidze. So for me, this one I would say is pretty clearly going in Hermansson's direction, especially based on what we just saw in his last fight. He's not going to give Dolidze really anything to go off of. He's going to pick him apart from a distance, never going to jump in and give him much of anything. He's obviously a really good grappler. I mean, he actually had a grappling match against Chimaev. He survived the whole thing. He had clearly lost it, by the way, but he did very, very well against who I would say is pretty clearly considered one of the best grapplers in the history of anything, really. I mean, he's just that good. So, for Hermansson to survive against that and do, okay, he got some points in there. I would say he definitely has the grappling advantage. I don't think there's any question about that. So really, is Roman Dolidze's only chance to win is on the feet. And considering what we saw against Chris Curtis, I don't think that Dolidze is going to ever have that opportunity. So I would say pretty clear decision win for Hermansson. I think it's just going to be a rinse and repeat of what we saw last time. So Probably not going to be horribly exciting, but I would say that's what's going to be happening here. So I'm going definitely on Hermanson on this one, minus 186. And I mean, for Hermanson right now, and I mean, I would say I understand why that's the case because, of course, Delitse won his last two in the first round. But, you got to think he did that to Chris Curtis, and then he's also an amazing grappler. So I just don't see a path for Delitse other than him landing something that Hermanson doesn't necessarily see. Like there'd have to be some kind of lapse in judgment from Hermanson for Delitse to do anything. So I'm banking on Hermanson not making mistakes like that, and I think that's pretty fair. So minus 186, I think that's a pretty good looking betting line. Would I put it in the main parlays? Maybe not, because Delitse always have that power. But like Chris Curtis also has more power than Delitse too. So it's kind of like it honestly just seems like he's facing a slightly worse version of Chris Curtis. So that's what I'm seeing here. So you could definitely put it in some of the parlays, but are you going to bank on that 100%? Maybe not. Maybe not. Over 2.5 is where it's at right now, which again makes sense. I mean, Hermanson is in a lot of decisions. Delitse used to be in a lot of decisions before these last two fights. So minus 155 for over 2.5. I think that's looking pretty good, actually. I would definitely be putting money on minus 155 for over 2.5. I think that's pretty fair. Excuse me. My throat. As always. I mean, what else is new? And yeah, that's what I got for that one. So it's looking pretty good for Hermanson, I would say. The next one, very interesting and definitely one of the most intriguing ones on the card. It's the heavyweights, Tai Tuivasa. Come on now. You got to be excited to see Tai, of course. And then Pavlovich on the other side. And I mean, really what we're seeing here is a product of both of their last fights, really. That's all these odds are. Because it really, if you take away the results of it, the betting line is actually kind of ridiculous. It really is. Because just look at what they've done in the past year. Like you've got Tuivasa, who basically, I mean, I honestly think that was his last fight against Gon. Really, to me, that was for a belt because Ngannou hasn't fought for so long and he won't be fighting anytime soon. To me, Gon is the champion. I just don't see it any other way because you can't call yourself a champion if you haven't fought in a ridiculously long time and you won't be fighting for another huge amount of time. It just doesn't make any sense to call Ngannou the champion. He also hasn't even defended it yet either. Or actually did no. He hasn't even defended it yet either. So it's kind of like, oh, that was his defense. That's right. But yeah, so it's just kind of, I don't know. It just doesn't seem right to call him the champion at this point when you have no sign of fighting anytime soon. It just seems a bit ridiculous. So for me, I would actually be calling Gon the champion. So for me, Tuivasa was basically fighting the champion. Also, I mean, Gon, I am still one of those people that firmly believes that Gon did win that fight against Ngannou. It was close, but he won it. So for me, even then, Gon's still the champion. you know, so it's like, Tuivasa basically he was in the main event against Cyril Gane in Paris. And by the way, he also almost finished Gane. And who didn't drop Cyril Gane? Ngannou. If Ngannou couldn't knock down Cyril Gane, but Tai Tuivasa could, that tells you everything you need to know about this matchup because he knocked out. Wow, my throat is fucked today. Because if Tuivasa could finish Derek Lewis, finish all those other guys, and then pretty much finish Gon as well, because he was out, and Gon admitted it himself. He was unconscious on the ground, sitting on the fence, and he basically, fully woke up and was like, just grab onto his legs. And that's exactly what happened. He fully admitted it. So, and he even said, that's the hardest I've ever been hit. So, I mean, there's not really a whole lot else you need to hear, especially when you consider the other side where, Pavlovich has been knocked out by somebody a couple years ago. I can't remember who it was at this point. And, I mean, he was essentially gifted that win from Derek Lewis. I mean, seriously, that was not a finish at all. It was a wild, probably the earliest stoppage I've ever seen. It really was probably the earliest stoppage I've ever seen, because he didn't really land anything. He landed one that then, kind of buckled Derek Lewis a bit. He didn't fall down, nothing crazy. He was just wobbled. He was like, okay. And then he was going backwards. But he was dodging all of the punches that were coming in at him. He didn't land anything clean after that. They were just either completely whiffing, or they would, get a little bit, just slightly, or he would hit the shoulder, he would hit the hand, nothing was clean after that. And then the ref just called it. And Derek Lewis just kind of stood there like, did you just end it? Like, what are you doing? Like, he wasn't even stumbling. He wasn't doing anything. He was just kind of like, are you serious? You just ended it right now? That was stupid. So, I mean, and it was stupid. So it's like, that was a gift of a win. And we have no idea what would have happened after that. Maybe he would have still won, maybe, but we never know. So for me, I mean, when you compare those two, it just doesn't, I like, Tuivasa should be the favorite for sure. For sure. And I will admit, I did doubt him for quite a while. I really did. I thought Lewis was going to beat him. I thought, and yeah, I thought Gon was going to beat him pretty easily. But guess what? He knocked out Lewis. And like I said, he almost knocked out Gon as well. He did technically knock out Gon, but he didn't finish the fight. you know? So, yeah. And yeah, and it took until the third round for Cyril Gahn to even get a finish. And again, that was also because Tuivasa started to get pretty wild, of course, which he always does. But he can take it too. Whereas I don't see from Pavlovich that he really can take it, because he's never actually faced anybody that's really that good and been hit. Whereas we know Tuivasa is going to hit him. We know he's going to hit him. He always hits everybody. He always knocks everybody down. So he will get a hit. He will hit him, and he will get a knockdown at some point. It's just a matter of how does Pavlovich respond to that? We don't know. So I would, for me, take away that uncertainty. I mean, Tuivasa seems like the pretty clear choice in this case, exactly because of everything I just said. Yeah. So I think he's the pretty clear guy to go with, and he's actually the underdog in this case. And I mean, I get it. If you look on paper, Tuivasa lost his last one to basically the champ, and Pavlovich has won his last few by first round knockout. But again, who has Pavlovich been fighting except for a gift of a win against Lewis? Nobody. So I don't know. It just doesn't seem, I'm not seeing the connection to a minus 217 favorite in this case. It just doesn't make sense. So plus 171 for Tuivasa. I mean, I'm putting money on that all day. And you got to remember, this is heavyweights too. Even if you don't believe anything I just said, like, they're also heavyweights. Both of them could get a knockout at any moment. So even just based on that logic alone, plus 171? Come on. I mean, like, that's absurd that it's that low right now. So plus 171, I'm jumping on that all day. And I would imagine those prop bets are going through the roof at that point. If plus 171 for Tuivasa is a thing, probably a KO is probably got to be at plus 220, plus 250 or something right now. So I mean, it's looking really good for the Tuivasa side, especially with the numbers. But yeah, the over under, understandably, is at 1.5. It is pretty low. You know, you're talking about two knockout guys. I totally understand why it's there. Uh, plus 157 for over 1.5, minus 209 for under 1.5. And again, I understand there's first round knockouts on both sides, a lot of them. So I personally, I might even stay away from it because minus 209 is pretty high for under 1.5. I would not be jumping on that. But the over is actually more intriguing in this case because plus 157, a lot of ties knockouts have been in the second round. So can it get over the 2.5 minute threshold? Maybe. I don't know. So I would actually be either staying away from this one or put a few bucks on the plus 157 for over 1.5 because that seems a little bit high. And we don't know. I mean, maybe Pavlovich is really durable. We know Tuivasa is durable. We know that. So we know he could go over 1.5. Can Pavlovich? I'm not sure. So again, we don't know if he can handle that. So maybe that over 1.5 makes more sense. So that's an interesting one. That is a very interesting one. After that, we go from the heavyweights down to the little guys, Mateusz Nicolau and Matt Schnell. Honestly, this is not even close. This one's not close at all. This one's a parlay one for sure. I mean, Nicolau is way underrated. He is so underrated. It's insane because I even noticed it a couple fights ago where it was like I saw him fight and I was like, this guy's the real deal. Like this guy is so good. And people don't seem to believe that he's as good as he is. Like people kind of seem to miss it. And I don't really know why. Maybe it's because he doesn't have the personality. He hasn't been making a bunch of noise. I don't know, but I mean, he's like, look at who he's beaten here. He beat Manel Kopp, which, by the way, that's something in itself because Manel Kopp is pretty incredible. So he beat Manel Kopp, he beat Tim Elliott, and he beat David Dvorak, and that was in the last one, who I believe is now 22-3. David Dvorak. I mean, that's a pretty crazy record, and he won that one, beat Tim Elliott, who is a staple of the top 15, and Manel Kopp, who honestly should also be in the top, probably the top 10. He's really, really good. So it's like, it's a complete mismatch in this one. Whereas you got on the other side, Matt Schnell, he had a good one in the last one, but other than that, I mean, he's lost to grapplers. He is good on the ground. I'm not saying he's not good on the ground, but if you look at when he faces grapplers, he has lost every single time. He's lost to Royval, he's lost to Bontarine, he's lost to Pantoja. All three of those guys, grapplers. So, I mean, just all around, this is a terrible matchup for Matt Schnell. I would be putting a lot of money on Nicolau on this one, and I'm putting him in pretty much all of the parlays on this one. I just don't really think it's all that close at all. That being said, he doesn't normally get finished. Schnell does not normally get finished by grapplers. So, there is a good chance that he could get a submission. I'm not saying it's out of the question for Nicolau to get a submission, but I'm leaning towards the decision on this one. I really am. And the over under does kind of fit that as well. It is at 2.5 right now, and it's pretty much dead even. Minus 105 for the under 2.5. And if he's getting a submission, I would see that because it would be second round, maybe edging into the third. Of course, if Schnell starts to get tired, I could see the third round submission too. That would make a lot of sense. So there's a good argument to be made for the over or the under in this case. So whichever way you think on this one, I'm not sure which way I'm leaning. I really am back and forth on the over and the under on this one. And the over 2.5 is at minus 123. So it is a little bit favored towards the decision. I think that's pretty fair. And I mean, what makes it even more, you know what? I am leaning more towards the decision now that I'm thinking about it, because Nicolau did get a decision win over all three of those guys that I just said. Cap, um, now I lost it. Cap, Elliott, and Dvorak. All three of those were decisions. So, another top contender, because Schnell, you could consider him a top contender, I guess. So decision does make sense. And Schnell hasn't. I'm not even sure if he's been submitted. I can't remember. I remember thinking, okay, he was knocked out by Pantoja. I remember that. And then I think the other ones were decisions. So, it makes sense. I would say more so towards the decision in that case. Minus 123 for over 2.5. I've now decided that would be the way to go. Then we've got the co-main. And if you thought that one was a mismatch, this one's a way bigger mismatch. This is not even close. It is RDA, Rafael Dos Anjos, and Brian Barberena. I mean, it's like you're talking about RDA, who just came off of he was beating Rafael Fiziev at times. It was a close fight, but he was kind of headed towards the win there, and then he ended up getting caught and eventually, of course, knocked out. But make no mistake, RDA was kind of heading towards a win there. And that was in a 5-round fight against who I would say is easily in the top 5 of lightweight, Fiziev. I mean, he's incredible. He's, I would say, easily one of the best strikers in the entire UFC. He's so crisp and so technical that you're really not going to find a more precise technical striker. I genuinely don't know if there are any other technical strikers like that at that level. He's just that clean. So for him to last until the 5th round to get knocked out like that, you know, he's definitely not going to get thrown off by Brian Barberena of all people. And RDA is still one of the best grapplers in lightweight and in welterweight. So it's kind of like there's absolutely no path to victory for Barberena here at all. So yeah, it just seems kind of silly, to be honest. Like, this is not a close matchup. This is another for sure like parlay. We're throwing this in most of the parlays for sure for RDA. Will he get the finish though? That's what I'm not sure about, because Barberena is extremely, extremely tough. So I easily could see him getting to a decision here. That being said, like when RDA gets it to the ground, because he will, he's got a pretty good chance of getting a finish, but I don't know. I just have a feeling that he's going to hold on. I really do actually think this is going to be a decision. And now I'm probably going to switch it on the article here. I'll switch it to a decision because I did have finish. But I've been going back and forth on that one. Is he going to get the finish or not? I'm not sure. But there is no question that RDA is a huge favorite going into this fight and should easily win that matchup. So I'm definitely going in that direction. Minus 567. That right there should tell you how lopsided this really is. And I think that's deservedly so. I think that is minus 567. That's pretty fair. So yeah, that's where I'm going with that. Like I said, perfect parlay opportunity. And the over under is at 2.5. And like I said, I would say that's pretty fair. Brian Barberena is a very, very tough guy. So, and he is regularly at 170, whereas RDA has been fighting at 155 and still not getting finishes. So I think the decision makes a lot more sense. It'll be a dominant decision and it will not be close. But I think he will probably make it to the end of this fight, Barberena. He should be able to make it to the final bell there. But like I said, I mean, with a mismatch this big, there's definitely a chance for a finish. I'm not saying there's no chance for sure. Minus 200 is for over 2.5 right now. Am I confident enough to throw money at minus 200 for that? I'm not really sure. Even just based on the numbers alone, I would probably be putting a couple bucks on the under because there's a lot more value there. You know, I don't know. It's a toss up. It really is a toss up on whether there's going to be a finish or not. But yeah, still parlay opportunity for sure on RDA on that one. Then you've got the main event. This one is very, very interesting, and it's 5 rounds, which of course, I mean, it's the main event, which makes this way, way more interesting. And honestly, this really could go either way. I'm not completely sold in either direction on this, and I don't really think anybody should be completely sold in either direction on this, which is why, I mean, it's not why I'm going with the underdog on this. Um, but I do think there actually is more riding in the direction of Wonder Boy on this one. I really do. I maybe people are gonna think I'm crazy on this one, but I really do. I actually see a lot more headed in Thompson's direction on this one. And we all know what's happened to Wonder Boy in the last couple fights. I mean, if you don't, he's been absolutely dominated by grapplers. That's really the entire story of his last 2 fights, and that's fair. And I mean, I don't think there's any. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's not surprising because if you watch it, which I did, I rewatched it just to make sure, just to make sure about my choice this week. But he was actually really hard to take down. Bilal, who I would say has probably the best, maybe some of the best takedowns in the entire division. He really does. Well, okay. Actually, I take that back because then you're comparing him to somebody like Chimaev and Colby. And there's no question there. Obviously, those two are way better than way better at doing takedowns than Bilal. But Bilal is very, very good at takedowns, and he is a ridiculous grappling presence. So for Wonder Boy to actually be able to shut down a lot of pretty much all of those takedowns, that says a lot. And I mean, listen, what did he manage to stay on his feet and make it a competitive fight? Not necessarily, because Bilal was just relentless with that. But when it was on the feet, Thompson was doing his thing, which is exactly what you would expect. And that's why in this matchup, you're going back to Thompson's ideal matchup. This is his ideal matchup, a striker, because that's what Holland is. I mean, you know, did he get a submission win? Yes. Did he improve his grappling a lot? Yes. But to call him, a grappling threat against Wonder Boy, that is just absurd to say. That would be pure insanity to actually fully believe that Holland is any kind of a grappling threat towards Thompson, because Thompson is just way too good at getting out of those situations. That, yeah, it would just be borderline insanity to say that Holland has a chance to take down Wonder Boy and get that's just silly to say. So really, this will be spent entirely on the feet, I would say. I mean, Holland is definitely going to try and grapple, but Wonder Boy just way, way too good at shutting that kind of stuff down. And Holland is going to have no chance in that direction whatsoever, especially when you consider what is he going to have like 3, 4, or 5 rounds in. Holland will not have anything in the grappling department there at all. So that shuts the grappling narrative down. That just leaves the striking. And you're talking about Wonder Boy, who is still probably could be the best striker in Well, I don't know. I was gonna say the best striker in the division, but I mean, you've got Usman, who is probably the best striker, and then you got Leon as well. So maybe not necessarily the best striker, but probably third place. So he's very, very good, and it's because of his movement. It's because I'm not saying he's going to get a knockout. I don't think he's going to knock out Kevin Holland. I don't think that's happening, but I do think that he's so quick and he's so good at not getting hit and then hitting you in return. The style is a nightmare in terms of Holland's style of fighting. It's just not, and especially as the fight goes on, he has a great chance of getting, I mean, his best opportunity for sure is round 1 and 2, where he's got, he's still got the power in, and yeah, he's still got the power to then knock out Thompson. But if he can't do that, 3, 4, 5, that's all Thompson, which is why I'm going in the Thompson decision route because, rounds 3, 4, 5, like I said, I think that's Thompson all day. I don't think Holland really has a chance at winning a decision like that. I think he can win. He can get a knockout. He can get a knockout. Don't get me wrong. He can get a knockout, but he's not winning a decision. It's just not happening because the styles do not match up like that at all. It just heavily, heavily favors Thompson by decision. So really, you should only be basing your decision on whether you think Holland is going to be able to get a knockout or not. And personally, I don't think he can because Thompson is just that good on the feet. It's just as simple as that. He's just too good on the feet to be hit that cleanly and get knocked out like that. I just have a hard time seeing it happen. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying it's impossible. You might even want to do a prop bet for Kevin Holland getting a knockout in the first or the second round, to then balance out just in case he gets the finish. But I would say the way you probably should be going with it is Thompson by decision. I think it makes way, way more sense that way. So that's the way I'm going with it, is a Thompson decision. And if you go towards the odds, it is pretty close. So, I mean, I'm not going to sound like a complete lunatic for saying that. The odds are very close, but it is the underdog. I'm going with the underdog. Plus 133, Wonder Boy. And then minus 163 for Holland. And I mean, you got to even think when the odds, like they're that evenly matched, you usually go towards the underdog anyway, just based on the value. So even based on the value, you should probably be heading in that direction anyway. The over-under is at 4.5. So they're definitely thinking this is going to be, is probably more likely going to be a decision. But interestingly enough, it is actually favored towards the under 4.5. So it seems like they're thinking Kevin Holland is going to get a knockout. I mean, when you put those two things together, if Holland is the favorite and under 4.5 is the favorite, clearly people are thinking Holland's going to get a knockout here. So if you don't think that's going to happen, well, good news for you. You've got some pretty good betting lines this week, and thankfully for us, we're on that side of it. Of course, will it happen? Who knows? We won't know until it happens, but it's looking like it. It's not crazy. It's not crazy. So I'm actually, like I said, I'm going for the over 4.5 plus 140. That's some pretty good money, especially when you consider, like I said, I don't think either one of these guys is going to get finished. They're both very good strikers. So even based on that alone, normally when you see two people that are good at the same thing, that usually is a decision. So that's how I'm going with it. It makes a lot of sense. When you put it together like that, it makes a lot of sense. So I think there's a lot of money on the table in this one. I really do. And we do have, well, I mean, when there's 15 fights going on, of course we've got some good looking prelims, and we will get into that right now. But interestingly, they're both women's fights. That's right, people. The women have really brought it this week. I am, and I'm not joking. I'm dead serious about this. The women's fights, to me, actually, I find way more interesting than the men's fights this week, which is rare, especially when there's 15 fights on a card. I was actually even going to be talking about the first fight, which is Yasmin Jauregui and Estela Nunez. I mean, a lot of people are going to be thinking, really? That's one of your favorite fights? Yes. Yes. I really do. There's a reason this fight is opening up the card. It is the first fight on the card. And if you haven't been paying attention, they've been putting some of the best matchups in the first fight of the night because they want people to come that early. And they also want it to set the tone for the rest of the night. And this fight will set the tone for the rest of the night because it is that exciting. Because I watched the tape on these two because I thought, this is actually pretty close. I watched the tape on it and I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be crazy." Because Nunes, amazing, amazing striker. Jauregui, also an amazing striker. And we literally just saw a few months ago what Jauregui is like, what happens when she goes against a top striker. It becomes an all-out brawl from both sides, and Nunes also loves an all-out brawl. So that, to me, that's an amazing looking fight. And I'm not going to get into the winner loser that one. I'm just saying the women are really bringing it, and it all starts with that first fight. The ones that I will talk about are the first one, which is Tracy Cortez and Amanda Hebos, which is dead even on the odds, by the way, right now. Yeah. And that is looking like a really good one because you're talking about two, I think they're both ranked. Yeah, ranked flyweights. And that is going to be a very, very intriguing fight because you've got Tracy Cortez on the one hand, who, by the way, one loss in her entire MMA career. That includes the her amateur career as well. She went like 6 or 7-0 in amateurs and then lost her debut and then won everything else. And by the way, and I can't believe I didn't pick up on this before, which is why I got Tracy Cortez wrong last time. She beat Erin Blanchfield. She she beat Erin Blanchfield before she got in the UFC. They were both in Invicta still, and she beat Erin Blanchfield in a split decision there. So that already tells you how good Tracy Cortez is, especially at shutting down grappling. Because if Blanchfield couldn't win her fight, I mean, yes, Blanchfield has improved a lot since then because that was 3-4 years ago, but still, that's that still kind of style. That's that style of fighting. And then she also beat Agapova outside the UFC as well. Um, and then, of course, since joining the UFC, she beat Stephanie Egger, who is another ground threat, who is much bigger, much, much bigger than Amanda Hebos, because Amanda Hebos is small. Stephanie Egger, not small, very big, actually. So she shut down the grappling of her as well, and also Melissa Gatto as well, who is also very, very good. So you can see where I'm going with this already. I'm leaning towards Tracy Cortez on this. And I'm not going to lie, I didn't understand the hype. I did not understand the hype going into her last fight. But after I saw that fight, and then yeah, after I saw that fight, I was like, okay, I get it now. She's really, really good. Also, you have to keep in mind too, and I know this is an outside of the fight kind of thing, but it's still something to keep in mind. You have to think about these things. Her boyfriend is Ortega, Brian Ortega, and you can't tell me that he hasn't been helping her out at least a little bit. And he is the biggest submission threat in the entire, well, I was going to say in the entire featherweight division. But of course, there is Bryce Mitchell. But either way, I mean, I think Ortega, Ortega is right up there. So I mean, she's got that. She's got that in her corner right there, helping her out every single day. And I know they train together. I follow both of them on Instagram. I see them together all the time. Obviously, I mean, they go out too, but they also train together too. So I can't imagine, like, I mean, especially if it were me, if I was going out with her and I was Brian Ortega, I would 100% be helping her all the time to develop that jujitsu, to develop a defense for jujitsu. You don't necessarily need to change your whole style, obviously, but you need to be able to defend the jujitsu, defend the takedown, defend everything. And I think Ortega has got to probably drilled that into her head right there, that she is probably really, really good at defending things now. I really I have a good feeling about that, which is perfect in this matchup because that's exactly what she needs. Because Amanda Hebos very much trying to get this fight to the ground. And that's exactly why actually this kind of does favor Cortez, because Amanda Hebos very, very good on the ground, but she's got to get it there. And she did against Chukagian, which, by the way, Amanda Hebos won that fight. I don't care. I don't care what the scorecard said. I will continue saying that Chukagian lost that fight. And I think that's pretty clear. And it's because of those takedowns. But can she do the same thing against Cortez? I don't know. I mean, I'd like to say, yeah, she probably could. She probably is going to. I mean, I know she's going to get at least a couple of takedowns. But like I said, I just have a feeling that that defense, I think people are underestimating that defense, especially with her work with Ortega. I think they're really underestimating that defense. And like I said, look at who else she's beaten. They're all grapplers. Like I said, Blanchfield, Agapova, not really a grappler, but Blanchfield, Egger, who is way bigger than Amanda Hebos. Like I said, she's more of a bantamweight, I would say. And then Gato, who's also very, very good. So to me, I mean, there's a lot going in that Cortez direction. That's all I'm saying. And like I said, and every fight, it always starts on the feet. And what have I been saying? And I've said this actually. I said this about Yan Xiaonan. I said this about um the boxer. What was her name? The Mexican one. Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm blanking on her name, but you know who I mean. I said the same thing for that main event as well. And it's the exact same matchup again. We see the same matchup over and over again. I will say this isn't quite the same matchup as Yan Xiaonan and Dern, and then whoever the Mexican one was. Oh man, that's gonna bug me so much because I like her so much too. Oh my goodness, I'm totally blanking on her name. But it's a similar kind of matchup where you've got a striker on one side who's very good at defending takedowns, and then pretty much, I wouldn't say a pure grappling artist in Hebos, but that's definitely where she's looking to get this fight done. So, it always starts on the feet. And if they can defend those takedowns, they're going to win the fight. They're going to win the fight every single time. That's all she has to do. Defend the takedown, defend the takedown, defend the takedown. And they're going to win every single time. So that's why I'm going with Cortez on this one. Minus 106 for Cortez. So she is just the slightest bit of an underdog. But I'm sure on different sites that is probably going to be, oh wow. Speaking of sites, what am I doing? I need to put up my banner. Oh, wow, I can't believe I forgot until just now. That of course will lead you straight into the Bet99 one as well. Yeah. But yeah, it'll be different on different sites. So I'm sure there are some sites that have Cortez as the favorite. There's going to be some sites like this one that has Hebos as the favorite. It is really that close. And that's why I'm so interested, of course, too. And I mean, I'm a fan of both of them too. I really am. I actually really like both of them quite a bit. So I don't really want to see either one of them lose, because I really do like them a lot. But Yeah, in this case, like I said, the style of it though, Cortez, I would say has the advantage here. And then of course, makes sense, heavily favoring the over and the over under. Minus 325 right now for over 2.5. You know, I mean, I don't think there's any other way to go with that. It makes a lot of sense. And I really don't see, I mean, could Hebus get a submission? Maybe, but Cortez has only ever lost once, and it was by a decision. And I don't think that's going to change now. I can't imagine that. So, yeah, I think a decision is clearly the way to go on this one. And I would even put that in the favorite. If you want to stay away from Cortez and Hebos, you want to stay away from that altogether. Even just throw in the over 2.5 in a parlay. I would say that's a pretty safe way to go with this. Yeah. Yep. Then we've got the last one. The last one I'm going to talk about. And like I said, it is another women's one because this is another ranked one. And it is also very, very interesting. I'm very interested in this one because I'm not really sure what's going to happen in this one either. That's what makes this one so exciting. Angela Hill, and it's again two exciting fighters because I'm never trying to sound mean about this because there are a lot of really good women's fighters and a lot of really good women's fights. But, if we're talking about in general, maybe not necessarily the most exciting fights sometimes, definitely more so than the men's fights. I would say the men's fights are usually more exciting. But in this case, like I said, you've got three very, very exciting women's fights because all six of these women are very exciting. And it's no different for, like I said, these two are no exception to that. Angela Hill, always in good fights. Emily Ducote, very new, but actually a very, very exciting fighter. We just didn't necessarily get to see that against Jessica Penne in her last one, but she is very exciting to watch. So this one's another one to keep an eye on as well, like I said. And the odds are dead even in this one as well. And I will admit, I went back and forth on this one. In fact, I did. I went towards Ducote on this one. I did have Hill originally. So, I switched my mind. I don't think I'll switch it back because I don't switch things after unless I see crazy shit on weigh-ins. Then I switch it. That's the only time I switch my choices after I come here. So I don't think I'll be changing my mind, but it really is that close. It really could go towards Hill, really could go towards Ducote. Um, and it's really tough because Hill really showed how good she was in the last one because Lupi Godinez is very, very good. It's just what's pushing me in the other direction now is because when you understand the circumstances around that fight, it kind of makes sense why Hill kind of won that one. Because Hill was fully prepared to fight a pretty tough competitor. I can't remember who she was supposed to fight, but it was a pretty tough matchup. And instead, she was given Lupi Godinez, who was given the fight that week or like the week before. I don't know. It was like within the 2 weeks. So it was like right at the last minute. And then she had to fully cut weight after that because she can fight at 125 and 115. So she had to fully cut weight down to 115, and she looked good for the first round. And then because of that, her cardio kind of went out the window. And then Hill kind of got the better of her in rounds 2 and 3. But the first round was all Lupi, which is funny because, yeah. Loopy in terms of the name, not in terms of watching it. Yeah, so that because of that, it kind of, makes me not want to pick Hill again because again, she's not the most reliable and it's not because of her. It's because she keeps getting stuck in these decisions that end up being split decisions and it never goes in her way. She has lost how many split decisions now? I think it's like 3 split decisions or something like that. That's crazy to lose 3 split decisions. And she's also she's gone 2-5 in her last 7. And like I said, one of those was the one I just talked about, which is a super last minute addition in Lupi Godinez, who wasn't really, she even said she wasn't really training up until like a couple weeks before the fight too. So it's like there's nothing going in Lupi's direction on that. So it kind of made sense. It made a lot of sense after hearing that as to why she lost rounds 2 and 3, which ended up losing her the decision. Whereas Dakota now, of course, fully prepared for this, of course, and she's got a difficult style to deal with because she is relentless in her offense. She's completely relentless when you see her other fights, except for that last one, which was a bit weird for her, I would say. So I don't think this is a good style. I mean, actually, it is. What makes this interesting is actually that it is a good style matchup for Hill because Dakota won't really be grappling, and that's how Hill keeps losing these. So it is really, really close. But I know I've said this before, but you have to keep going back to it. It's the age. I hate to say it, but the only difference maker for me was the age because Angela Hill is now, I think she's 38. She's almost 40. I know that. She's 38 or 37. Meanwhile, Dakota is 28. She's not even 30 yet, or maybe she was 29 or something. No, I think she was 28. So you've got that already. So there's already that going in there. So which means she's obviously going to have the cardio, you know, and she's got the style to deal with it. I don't know. It's just like I said, I really am 50. Actually, I would say I'm 49-51 on this. The 51 being Dakota, which is why I'm going in that direction. But I cannot stress enough. This is very, very close. And I'm really nitpicking on this one, which is why I'm going towards the age, because I just think as the fight goes on, I really think that Dakota is still going to be doing stuff and pushing. Whereas Hill, I mean, I know she's going to be trying to push, but can she keep up with somebody that much younger who already is a faster strawweight as it is? I don't know. So that's why I'm going just barely towards Dakota. And I actually think this could be another split decision. This really could be another split decision going against Angela Hill on this one. It really could be. That would be devastating to see that. I would hate to see that because it's like, oh my God, not a fourth one. That would be horrible to see. But, you know, this really is another scenario where that could happen for sure. Yeah, but I cannot stress enough how close this really is. But yeah, so I'm going with Dakota on this one. But whichever way you go on this one, it's really up to you because I see benefits on both sides. I really do. Minus 125 for Dakota right now. Angela Hill plus 105. So like I said, dead even. And I mean, like I said in the other ones, if you are thinking of going towards just playing the numbers on this one, if it is that even, you would probably go towards the underdog. You would probably go towards Angela Hill in that case because you're playing the value more so than, who looks like a slightly better pick. I'm definitely not opposed to going in that kind of lane as well. That would also make sense. So like I said, it's better's choice on that one. It's, pick your poison on that one. Are you going to go with the person who maybe just has the slightest, tiniest bit of an edge? Or do you go with the value on this one? It's up to you. But the over under, I mean, clearly we're going towards the over on this one. And I mean, minus 400 for over 2.5. We're going on that direction for sure. And definitely be putting that in a parlay because I don't see either one of these getting a finish. I don't see that at all. And that is it. That is it for the picks. But we will quickly go over the parlays now, and then we'll call it a night. And I got a lot of actually got a little bit to talk about after I go over the parlays, because there's actually a lot happening this week that we will then be covering next week, but we will get into that after this. The first, let's see here. I'm honestly not convinced by Jauregui. I know she's very, very good, but if you watch how good Estela Nunez is at striking, she's got a pretty good chance. I actually do think that. So Estela Nunez might have a good chance at this one. I really do. So I'm staying away from that in the parlay. Um, Natan Levy minus 209. I think that's a great parlay opportunity for him. Jonathan Pierce at minus 500. Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. I'm going all in on Jonathan Pierce there. Jacasey, there's something weird about Michael Johnson, honestly. He's so inconsistent. Like, he could have a fucking incredible performance against Jacasey and win, or he could just get absolutely washed out. There's no in between for Michael Johnson. So honestly, I have no idea. I definitely am leaning towards Jacasey though, and he is at minus 313. So I might be putting him in a couple of the parlays, but I don't know. Michael Johnson scares me. He's a wild card. He really is in terms of the betting. So I tend to stay away from him now, because he's just, you never know what's going to happen with him. Then we go on and on. Let's see here. Dawkins minus 213. We talked about that. I'm definitely putting him in some of the parlays, not all of them though. It is really that close. Hermanson is kind of in that same realm where I think he should be able to win pretty easily, but will he? I'm not sure. Nicolau, definitely minus 400 for sure, going in that direction. Dos Anjos, RDA, minus 567, definitely in the parlays. And that is it. So as it stands, that would be RDA, Nicolau, swap in, swap out Hermanson Dawkins. So we've got 2.5 picks in our parlay, basically. Jacasey, maybe. That's another one you want to swap in and out. Pierce, for sure, minus 500. Going in on that. Natan Levy, looking good. And that's it. So we still got some good parlays. And I mean, of course, there's a lot of over 2.5s. There's a lot of those that are looking really good, especially, of course, like I was saying, Ducote and Hill. Hermanson Delidze is probably a good one too, like I said. And then RDA Barberena. Those overs make sense to put together like that. But yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. Oh, and I will get rid of my banner. But yeah, so before I go, tomorrow is actually BFL 75. Landmark BFL 75. Can't wait for, or is it 76? Shit. Either way, it's a really big card for BFL. I think it actually is 75. Yeah, and it looks like a really good card. I'm serious. Like, there's a lot of fights on there. There's 2 or 3 belts. I think 3 belts. Naveed Zangane is back against Dario Sinagoga. That looks really good. So, I mean, that card, amazing. Definitely watching that. I'll be doing my bonuses, doing all that. That's tomorrow. Then Friday, supposedly, I mean, I've seen Unified cancel their events before, like the day before. So we'll see. But right now, it looks like there's still Unified is up as well. So that's Friday. Lots of Canadian MMA content to talk about. So like I said, Thursday, Friday. And then, of course, Saturday, we've got this event. So 3 events this week. Probably. I mean, like I said, you never know about Unified. I'm not sure about that. But as of now, it looks like it's still on. So yeah, so we're looking at 3 events, 2 Canadian events this week. And then, of course, next week, we've got our pay-per-view to talk about. So It's going to be a long one next week, and I will definitely really have to do my best to a lot, cut down a lot out of out of the show. Like really cut down on the descriptions and the talking and the conversation. I really have to cut everything down next week because, like I said, that's 4 cards, 4 pretty huge cards actually. Because this card is massive. I mean, like I said, there's 15 fights right now. So yeah, we could be looking at we're easily looking at 2 hours next week, maybe even 2.5. Hopefully nothing longer than that. I would just call it short at that time. So yeah. Long one next week. Gonna be very interesting though. Lots of MMA content. But guess what though? After the pay-per-view, there's really not much else. I think there's one more UFC card after that to then close out the year, I think. And then that's it. And then there's nothing. So, we got a lot right now, and then there won't be anything after a few weeks. So we'll enjoy it while we can, and then take a nice holiday break, and then come back, of course, in the new year. That's what we're going to be doing. But anyway, I can't wait. I'm excited. BFL 75. I think it's, like I said, 75, 76, one of the two. I think it is the landmark 75, though. So yeah, I'm excited to watch that. Excited to watch Unified. Very excited for UFC Orlando. And that's it for me. Yeah. Thanks for watching, everybody. Oh yeah, of course, all my socials are down below. Area 51. They've got all the other sports. That is also down below. Thanks for watching. I will see you next time.